Good afternoon from a very wet and rainy South Florida. Captain Bill Gustin with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. And we've got two special guests. The only real regular is Captain Mike Dugan, retired from 123 Ladder Company 123 FDNY, who's going to give us an examination of some pre-fire planning information. So we're going to cover a lot of territory today, pre-fire planning being that, but with a special focus on accessing that information, that intelligence, and also as it pertains to hose stretches. So I've got to my right, as I sit, I guess it would be to your left, my left, Chris Morales. And then I got to tell, you go ahead and introduce yourself, and and I'm going to brag on you a little bit because of our history. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Captain Chris Morales, Engine Company 6 down in Miami-Dade. Got about coming up on 18 years, and I'm a second-generation fireman. And the first generation is good friends and old partners with the good Captain Gustin for a long time.
Can I ask you, what month were you born? You were born in 84.
84, December 8th, 84.
And my son was born on November the 20th. So his dad, Lieutenant Manny Morales, was a dear friend and was a mentor. He served in Korea and with the Army. He brought a lot of experience and maturity to the table, and it was a privilege. And I learned so much from him. I was a new lieutenant, so I was eager to learn, and I was blessed to land Engine 7. And the reason that I landed Engine 7 was that they at the time, our battalions were led by captains. So we had this Captain Brennan Barton. And Engine 7 showed up on a structure fire, and the lieutenant wasn't dressed out. And then when the captain called him out on it, he gave him some back talk, and he was gone. I don't know what he did, but he was gone. And then I had the privilege of working for 6 months with Manny, and we had incredible amount of fire. So I have held little Christopher in my arms when he was just a babe. And I remember your dad did not hand out cigars. He handed out bottles of Beck's beer with blue. What do you mean you're saying? Yeah, you don't remember. You wasn't around.
I remember you telling me the story.
Yeah, I know. Got bragged on you all this time. But to watch you used to come to our drills and paid attention, and I've watched you go up through the ranks, and I told you this the other day when we went in for an EMS field supervisor's last shift. Whenever you walk past Chris Morales, he's talking about stretching hose. Not football, not movie stars, not fishing, not boats. He's talking about stretching hose. He stretches hose in his dreams. He stretches hose in every building, and he's going to explain, as our good friend here from Arizona, Eric, is going to explain, that they have unbridled, unprecedented growth. Before we go any further with that, I want to thank our good friends at Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. The recruits are dragging it in the rain right now. If you want to put hose to the test or any type of apparatus or any type of equipment, give it to your recruits, because it's going to get beat up, dragged across asphalt and around corners, around windowsills, and it's being put to the test. Incredible kink resistant, amazing flow capabilities, as Chris will allude to with his 350-foot stretch. And but it's a great product. Don't go cheap on hose. So, Eric, want to tell us a little bit about yourself, sir?
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Nebraska, and by God's grace, I ended up in the great state of Arizona. I started my fire service career in Colorado with the Snowmass Wildcat Fire Protection District outside of Aspen. But I've been here full time since January of 2008. And I work for Central Arizona Fire Medical Authority. And we basically cover 369 square miles with 10 full-time engines and 1 training engine. I've been fortunate enough to be the training chief since last fall. I promoted up, and training is my passion. I love it out here. We currently have a recruit academy that's got about 2.5 weeks left. They'll graduate. We'll bring in another one this summer, and we're going to have probably one of the largest hire of our history this fall, as we were just awarded our CON. So now we've got ambulances. We'll be pumping those out here soon this summer, hiring for that, and also just for attrition. So the juices are going here. We're happy to be growing. We're just trying to keep up with it. So that's always a fun challenge for training that we look forward to. But I've got a great staff here. Everybody's bought in the community. So now we're just trying to play catch up a little bit.
I want to give a shout out to our regular members that are not here today, starting with Daryl Liggins. Daryl had a chiropractor appointment, which Daryl, I would put you in a headlock and give you chiropractic anytime you want it. I will straighten out what's hurting you. Clark Lamping from Clark County, that would be the Las Vegas area, is teaching hose engine company operations, as well as Jimmy Davis from the Chicago Fire Department, captain of Engine 43, and Chief Brent Brooks from Toronto, Canada. All of those guys, along with Steve Robinson, who's not a regular, but he's been on the program, are teaching at the Great Lakes. What was it called again there, Captain Mike? I think you're muted, Mike. Yeah, Great Lakes.
Yep, the Great Lakes hot.
I wish I was there. I wish I was there right now. So, and then let's see, Dan Shaw, who is probably getting promoted again today. Kenny Yost is not a regular, but he is had to attend a memorial service for a deceased helicopter flight medic that very tragically a few months past was with Broward Sheriff Fire Rescue and crashed and was lost his life. And let's see, Jason Hovelman is taking his daughter to a volleyball tournament. And Sam, I don't know where you are, Sam Hiddle out there, but you're probably out trying to figure out new and ingenious ways to force doors by yourself. That's why you got a natural fulcrum inside your head. So that's what our regular staff is doing. So I want to look at pre-fire planning. And just today, Chris, if I could, we've got a building, acquired structure at in Virginia Gardens on 36th Street across from the airport.
Okay.
It's a 6501 Northwest 36th Street. It is a office occupancy. And Chris, it is a damn rat maze. There's no familiarity with the floors below. So,
is that like that gray building?
Pardon me?
Is it a gray building?
There's a complex of like mauve buildings, but it's 4 stories. Each floor is different, and finding a fire in there and then not estimating the stretch. We're looking at extending a rope off of the nozzle. Mike, you and I've talked about this before, and then making forays, going in one direction, coming back, and then going to another direction. And as far as the amount of hose that you would use, if we simply went by length plus width, that might get us in the neighborhood, but we're not accounting for the from floor to floor and from the apparatus to the building. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it. This is going to be our division drills for the next couple of months. Now that let's get the heat index over 106 so that we can have some really good, meaningful training. Hey, but seriously, for everybody, for all of our viewers, it's summertime. It's hot. Is it necessary to wear full protective clothing every time you drill? And the answer is no, it's not. It's not. For years, we would do hose stretches in a parking garage in our gym pants and t-shirts. And then we do it until we had it down. We were good at it. And then once an intense 25, 30-minute drill in your full gear. If you can't handle that, regardless of the temperature outside, we don't need you on the job. So, Chris, I need you to come over there and take a look at this from an engine company perspective. Mike, it is a scary, I don't know if you have any suggestions for us. If you can imagine, it's an office building. It's about 300 by 75. Each floor is all chopped up as far as locating a fire and having the hose line somewhere in proximity of these firefighters searching with a rope. And Mike, you and I have discussed this before. You could have a tick, a thermal imaging camera. We turn you loose in an office suite. You're not going to find your way out. In perfect visibility, you're not going to find your way out. And then you add a little bit of smoke to it. So I don't know if you have any suggestions for us, Captain Mike. Let me see who keeps calling me. You know, it's legions of adoring women all the time, but they're all coming from the same nursing home. So I don't know what this is.
You know, Bill, there's a thing on the phone called silence.
Oh, yes. Okay, hold on a minute. I'll do that. When did they invent that?
Yeah. Yep. All right.
I just switched it on to you're just jealous because you're not getting the phone calls from the nursing home.
I'm getting them.
So, Mike, how would you go about it? How would you even start?
I would start with the building, with familiarization for the first in companies. I would start with the companies. I would do an on-scene drill, a walkthrough. We had a building in my district where I was the captain, Rutland Houses. It was 4 interconnected buildings, 2 blocks long, interconnected, the hallways. They had a hallway on the 3rd floor, the 6th floor, and the 9th floor. It was a 10-story building. And the apartments were either straight in and down, or in and up. Okay? And you could go down the hallways. You could be 550 feet down a hallway. That's how long these hallways were. And it was scary. So you have to have some sort of a drill on this thing and figure out what you're going to do, where the staircases are, how you're going to vent the hallways, how you're going to do all of these things. You have to get in there and figure it out. The other thing that to me is huge is if we are going to do a search rope evolution, the entire job has to be on the same page. All the search ropes have to be identical. They have to be labeled whose they are. Engine 1, engine 2, ladder 1, ladder 2. So if I'm looking for a missing member from ladder 2 and I find ladder 1 search rope, I'm not going on that search rope. I'm looking for ladder 2 search rope. And it should be marked with a unit identification. If you mark the lines, the 25-foot things or anything else, I'm all for that. A couple of things that have to be done, and you have to train your people. There are 2 types of search rope searches. One is for fire, and the other is for a victim after we have found the fire and start putting water on the fire. That's a totally different search. That's air dependent. The fire one is, to me, is water dependent. And I always told my guys, you go in 50 feet, the reach of the stream. You get there and you haven't found the fire yet, bring the hose line to you for protection so you can get back out of that building. Then go the next 50 feet looking for that fire. But if you don't differentiate what you're doing, it's like not differentiating between a private dwelling and a commercial building. You are going to have huge problems. So pre-planning it and what you're going to bring, what kind of hose line, what kind of building is it? You know, this is an office building, probably not full partitions, probably not broken up. So you're going to have a large fire load, could be over your head, drop ceiling. Fire could be going 150, 200 feet down the way, and it's up into the drop ceiling, and it's now over your head, and you don't even know about it. You've got to have a plan for the ceilings, for getting up there, seeing what's up there, and seeing what's above your head. And all of these things are so important that our people start thinking about these things.
Mike, and this we're going to do that, and everything you just said. I know that on my boss's Nick Morgado's ride home today, he listens to the audio of this. Everything you just mentioned there, Captain Mike, are things that we're going to incorporate, and I'm going to invite Captain Morales. We're going to put our heads together here, and we're going to come up with a plan, but it's going to be extensive pre-planning. And then we're actually, of course, going to stretch the hose. Now, in the FDNY, you have a remarkably simple, user-friendly pre-fire intelligence system for buildings. Like this would be a beauty. But Mike, you saw the video that I sent you. By the way, what a heads-up dispatcher, a Brooklyn dispatcher, and you can tell you can tell in her accent she's from Brooklyn. She's not from Lower Alabama.
Right.
But would you like us to play the video first, Mike, or do you want to give a little bit of explanation?
I think if you play the video first, the people can hear what the dispatcher says, and then I can address it.
Okay. All right, Mark, you want to go ahead? We're going to play about 5 minutes of this video.
Attention engine 282, ladder 148. Response phone alarm box 3797, the address 1362 46th Street, 13 and 14 Avenues for a fire. Engine 282.
282, responding.
Transfer Brooklyn telephone alarm box 3797, the address 1362 46th Street, 13 and 14 Avenues. It's for a fire on the 3rd floor.
Ladder 147 in Brooklyn.
Ladder 147.
You want to redirect us to that?
Get it, not at this time.
147, 10-4. 281 in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn Battalion 4-0. 4-0, we loaded up the box. We're getting multiple calls reporting a fire. We have the initial address of 1362 46th Street. We're also getting 1364 46th Street.
10-4.
Brooklyn Squad 1.
Squad 1.
Squad 1 responding.
10-4, Brooklyn.
Units responding into phone alarm box 3797. This information reads as follows. A 4-story multiple dwelling, 30 by 60 class 3. Lightweight metal floor joist. Daycare in the basement. 1 apartment per floor. 3rd floor is a duplex up to a small penthouse. Beating the SIDS for box 3797, the address 1362 46th Street. Between 13th and 14th Avenues, a 4-story multiple dwelling, 30 by 60 class 3. Lightweight metal floor joist. Daycare in the basement. 1 apartment per floor. 3rd floor duplex up to a small penthouse. 282.
1075, the box. Can't see the location at this point.
10-4.
Okay, Mark, that's good. Thank you.
10-4.
So you heard this dispatcher who was really very astute as to what was going on. CIDS is CIDS, Critical Information Dispatch System in New York, okay? And it's an address-based system. That's why the dispatcher is asking for the corrected address from the battalion. And we didn't get into that there, but you will hear the dispatcher say to the battalion, what is the corrected address? They want the address, so they have the building. Because if the building, the address comes up in the system, if it's 2 numbers to either side on the odd, so it's 13, so it's 11 or 09, or it's 15 or 17, it will give them the SIDS for those other buildings. So it's an address-based system. That's why the dispatcher wants it. But if units go out on anything, normal business, normal building inspection, an EMS run, a complaint, building inspection, anything that's not noticeable from the street. And in that video, we saw the penthouse up on the roof where they expand up onto the roof, but it's not visible from the street. So now your roof firefighter who's going up to vent that roof, to vent that public hallway, is going to need to bring an additional portable ladder at the tip of the roof to get up onto the penthouse, to get onto the roof of the penthouse to vent that. So this is something that's already been put into that system. So again, it's information that is based on the address of the building, okay? So every couple of years, you got to go out and review them. A vacant building might be completely rehabbed, okay? It might be knocked down. It might be gone, okay? A building that was a hazardous building because they were doing metal refinishing might not be doing that anymore. So again, the issue with this is like everything else with computers: garbage in, garbage out. The officers and the people who are out looking at these buildings have to take the time to put this stuff into the building. And in the city of New York, if the building appears very, very dangerous, there's something critical, we put it in SIDS and it goes right immediately. We call the SIDS desk and they're going to put it in with approval from the deputy on duty. Then we're going to write up a memo to all the responding units who will go on the first alarm with the rescues, the squads, everybody, and they will get a letter about this address. This address is a bad building. They're renovating it. They've cut holes in the floor. Do not go in there. You can fall through the floor. So I tell the story. One of my dear friends was a battalion chief up in Harlem. And he was working and they went to a fire in a vacant building and they were getting ready to rehab this building, and they had put a sidewalk shed around this building so they couldn't pick up the address of the building. They just had the block that it was on. And my buddy went up and he looked at the building and he got the address. And he said, he gave the address to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher came back immediately and said, "Chief, this building is extremely dangerous. The SIDS is as follows, that it's extremely dangerous. Expect an interior collapse." He immediately got on the radio: "Mayday, mayday, mayday. All units out of the building now. Leave the hoses, leave anything not in your hand, and get out of the building now." The last guy got out of the building. Less than a minute later, the entire inside of the building pancaked down onto the ground. And if it wasn't for the SIDS, somebody would have been killed. Okay? But we have to be wary of going out and putting that information in. And then if we see that, I know that's a SIDS building, and I know I did a SIDS card on that, and I see it changing, I'm going to go back and look at this. I'm going to go back and see what's going on in that building, because occupancies change all the time. So you have to be willing to go out. And I used to joke with my guys about going out and doing building inspections. Building inspection is a walk in the neighborhood ruined by paperwork. And I'll do the paperwork.
So, Mike, that's a great examination. And Chris and Eric, one of the reasons, and Chris, don't worry about the rain, man. If you get background noise, you got background noise. It's raining gorillas and monkeys there, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's to say the least. It just slowed down a little bit, but it's either that or my two terrors inside.
No, he's got.
That's interesting.
You have to understand that he is coming to you live from Rancho Morales, which is a high-end place in a neighborhood called Gables Estates.
Right.
And so he's got, which is really convenient for Chris, because he's got his yacht tied up in a canal that leads out to the ocean.
Right.
Yeah. So we do real well. So I guess we'll start with you, Chris. So it's kind of a two-part question. Pre-fire planning, how you're keeping up with it, and how you are specifically in terms of hose stretches coming up with an evolution for a specific type of building. I'm sure there's similarities in certain construction processes, but both you and Eric are undergoing a unprecedented growth spurt. So can you tell us a little bit about how you've been coping with this, Chris, and how you've been looking at these new buildings and keeping track of them in terms of hose stretches?
Well, as far as keeping up with the new buildings, whenever we get a run on them, that's the perfect time that we actually say, hey, before we clear the call, let's go walk this place. Let's go walk the floors. Let's go see where the, if they got any building systems. Let's see where the alarm panel is, access. A lot of these new buildings are having the key fobs that you can't just go in the elevator and just go hit floor 5 if you got to take the floors, just for like a medical run or, a pick-me-up or something. So getting acquainted with the buildings in that sense. I always tell my guys on multiple dwellings, one of the big factors that's going to be the determinant factor on how and where we stretch is the hallway type. Open hallways, enclosed hallways, semi-enclosed hallways. And what we're seeing a lot is basically a lot of the open hallway, garden style, courtyard style apartments, but we're also getting some semi-enclosed. And for the garden apartments and the courtyard style apartments, when we walk these buildings, I ask my guys, I say, hey, if we get a fire in this building and we park here, how and where are we going to stretch? And we just do it, with the modified flat load that we're running now. We load that up and it takes 2 minutes to load. But actually getting out and just walking these buildings while you're actually on a run is the best way, the easiest way to get the pre-fire plan. Because we got so much other stuff that we're doing, right? Besides all the other calls, all the online training, the death by target solutions, all that good stuff. That's the first place how we're getting some of the pre-fire plan and stuff done. I'll be honest with you, Lennar and DR Horton and a couple of these other big developers, they're putting up buildings like pizza guys make pizza. It's incredible how fast they go up. So whenever we see the ground being broken on them and the names put up, I write them down. I already have all my pre-incident plans for next year, just because that's how many have gone up, and they're going up fast.
Now, as a captain on your job, you have a rescue company in there. Remember, that's an officer and 2 firefighters. Yeah. And it's more than an ambulance. That's what
we're lucky now. We got a second rescue. We got 2 rescues.
Yeah. Well, what does that tell you right there? It tells you that the growth, we can't keep up with the growth. They had to put a second medic rescue in Station 2. Station 6. I can remember when that place was surrounded by avocado groves, and if you got you get maybe 1 or 2 runs. Now it's very similar to Station 2. You guys are busy as can be.
Yeah, I was looking up some stats on the census the other day, just how many people have moved in. In the 2020 census, my territory specifically, Homestead, Modelo, and Naranja, about little over 80,000 people in just those 3 little communities in that city. As of 2020, I guarantee you that's well over 100,000. That well over 100,000 in these last 4 years with everybody moving down here and stuff. We've gotten about over 20,000 new residential units that have been put up, that have been approved, either approved, built, or actually being built as we speak, since 2016, just in that 8 square mile area. So they're starting to crank them out.
Before we get to Eric, shout out to our buddies at Key. And make sure when you're making that long, difficult stretch, you're stretching key hose, because it's very easy to work with. And both advancing when it's charged and stretching. You mentioned the modified flat load. We're going to talk about that. But before that, let's Thank you, Key. And I say this in every hangout. Take the Key challenge. Try to kink the hose. And they have different brands, the Combat Ready, the Combat Sniper, the FDNY Spec, and the True ID. All badass hose. Can't go wrong with any of those. Eric, did it sound familiar when Chris was talking? Does that kind of sound like your situation?
Yeah, very similar. Especially since 2020, we've had a huge spike in population growth. Just Central Arizona fire, our area, we cover about 110,000+ in population, but we auto aid with Prescott Fire, and they've grown just as much too. I bet you just 20,000 people in the Prescott area. So you're talking 15 total engines to cover that many people in Prescott's probably 42 square miles. So we're going up in growth and building construction. All that building construction is lightweight wood frame. And I think to your point you made earlier, Mike Dugan, those pre-planning stages, we have a great prevention division. We collaborate with them. We meet up with superintendents, and our crews are eager to get into these structures as they're being erected and kind of walking those stretches, practicing drops, things of that nature. So that way they're not caught, later during the emergency. However, to your point earlier, Captain Gustin, when you start talking about your training, we're very big on repetition and limitations. Your repetition comes with getting out there, getting boots on the ground, moving that hose around, and then also that limitation of when you get the gear on, even in Arizona, and Chris, please send some of that rain our way, brother. We appreciate that. But, when we get our 100 and something degree days, yeah, we're not going to go at 3 p.m. necessarily and go full bore, but you do have to start putting that gear on and doing some of this to know what your limitations are as you're stretching that 2.5 inch, as you're moving upstairs. And in our stairwells, we've got some structures where they're inside, some of them are exposed stairwells. And what does that look like with stretching hose so you don't either bring not enough, or you can also overstretch too much hose, and protecting that ingress and egress, especially with your exposed stairwells that we have with a lot of our 2- and 3-story multifamily dwellings. What does that look like for, obviously, life safety is our number one incident priority. So when you're looking at objectives, how are we getting water where it needs to go as fast as we can get it, and also allowing people to get in and out? Where are you staging resources on the exterior? All that comes into play with like what Mike Dugan mentioned, your pre-planning and getting those resources around there and seeing what that looks like before the call.
Chris Morales, do you have somebody that wants to weigh in on the discussion?
Yeah, that's Mr. Spook here.
Right. Yeah. Remember, I love dogs. I hate people, but I love dogs, man.
Yeah, he's a good boy. Yeah, he's a good
the more
boy.
people I meet, the more I like dogs.
Is that an Argentinian dogo?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
That is correct.
Yep.
He's about 1.5 years old, so he's still in that puppy phase.
Oh, geez. Oh, you got another one back there too. Oh,
yeah.
No, we love that. We love that. Eric, are you keeping up with, as far as the combustible construction? Admittedly, we have more concrete block because we have an abundance of coral rock here. We have these rock pits out just west of where I live, out here near the Everglades, that have these huge excavators that just haul this crushed rock out. So we have a lot of concrete, but it's type 3 construction for the most part. It's not type 1 by any means. It's 3 because the floors are exactly what you were talking about, Eric. It's parallel cord floor trusses. Had a heck of a fire in the city of Miami, and there's a separate department. And kudos to our brothers and sisters on the city. They had themselves a 1920s vintage, I believe it was 4-story. Disgruntled tenant shoots the landlord and opens up 2 20-pound LP tanks and lights it off. And of course, the fire gets up in the cockloft, Captain Mike. And I think that they tried to bring in a stream on the tower ladders down and into the top floor windows, but even with the power of the master stream, you know that there's got to be. It was built in the 20s with no air conditioning in Miami, Florida. You know the ceilings have got to be at least 12 feet high, and how many other ceilings? I don't know that they could get through them all. Anyway, kudos for our brothers and sisters in the city of Miami. Man, they rescued about 40 physically impaired people. If this had happened at night, it would have been a disaster, but they had their hands full.
Can I say something, Bill?
Yes, you certainly can.
I like to tell people pre-planning. Go back and look at the Worcester Cold Storage Warehouse. Mike McNamee is a friend of mine. He is an honorable, decent, great guy. And he told me a couple of times he used to drive past there and say, I hope we don't get a fire in there. Well, if you're driving past a place and you say, I hope we don't get a fire in there, you and your people should be there at least once a month. I would say once every 2 weeks, and drilling on that building. New people, you drill on that building. All the time, you drill on that building. You want to be proficient at what you are going to do on that building that scares you, okay? If you are in an area with 2-story private dwellings, you should be damn good at doing private dwellings. And you should spend time getting good at private dwellings. But then you go to your buildings that are your outliers, your scary ones, and you spend time with them. Because if you don't, if you look away and shield away, you are setting yourself up for a total failure. And it's so important that we understand that there are buildings out there that should scare us. And we have to spend time getting comfortable at what we're going to do and how our crews are going to react at this building.
Yeah, it's Mike. I said that today. Chris, I was there with Ricky Stevens, and we mentioned Worcester Cold Storage more than once. And we're thinking, how turned around can you get? And if you don't, if Worcester Cold Storage is not in your vocabulary, and you consider yourself a professional firefighter, whether it's career or volunteer, you're not a professional firefighter, because anybody can have that rat maze condition. Eric, can I ask you about your hose stretches? Because we're gonna examine that. We just changed our hose load configuration. We're operating with crosslays. If it was up to me, I'd like everything off the back, but it's not up to me. As Johnny Mathis says, it's not for me to say. Right, Mike Dugan?
Yes, sir.
These other guys don't know who Johnny Mathis is. Hey, I got to tell you, I had a recruit class, and I was bragging about how some of our captains went out to Las Vegas with Clark Lamping, and we stretched into Frank Sinatra's penthouse suite in the Riviera Hotel and Casino. They're tearing it down. Blanks. Not one person in that recruit class knew who Frank Sinatra was. Yeah. So Eric, what type of hose load do you have for, and you configure your hose, I'm going to gather, based upon the configuration of your buildings. So how do you configure your 1 3/4 attack lines?
So we actually just switched our attack lines. We used to have triple loads for years. And about 2 years ago, we switched over to Minuteman. And the reason we came up with that was a couple reasons. One, we put it out to the floor, to the membership. They're the ones pulling the hose, so let's collaborate on this. But we threw, 3 different hose loads out there: Minuteman, flat load, and then the triple that we had used already. And let the membership pull it. And we did some time trials. We gauged versatility, and that's why we came down with, for our demographic, being the Minuteman being the best choice. So that's what we pull for our 1 3/4 pre-connects. We have our 2.5 inch that comes off the rear. We have a Stinger, and that's great for when we start talking about horizontal standpipes, So again, we're running with these Minuteman right now, and then the big thing too is part of our time trials and everything was getting out in your first few areas, being familiar with what you're going to pull your hose into, and then practicing your drops, practicing things like that. So we're more efficient now that we have transitioned, and everybody's more versatile in all the advantages of having that hose load.
Well, Eric, you are now a honorary member of the triple layer hose hating society, of which Chris Morales. Chris, give us a background. And you said something very important, Eric. You listened. You listened to your crews. They're the ones that are deploying the hose. Chris, you were in the research and development phases of and it was something that I'm so proud of our department. Upper management, they listen, but you're deep in the south end of the county, and then we had companies in the north end working independently. Can you go ahead and just give us some background, and then we'll show the video.
So background as far as the modified load?
Yes, sir. And why we switched from the triple layer.
So the modified flat load that was first shown to me by Lieutenant Shane Pyle of your house of Engine 2, and he came up with that. He showed it to me probably about a year or so before we actually started running it down on my truck at my station, and I thought very practical because the triple layer load, it's definitely got its applications, but as well as I know that if you grab or mix up the couplings when you stretch that thing, you can make a knot in the hose. You're gonna knot up that hose, and especially when you got to get skinny with the rig, on a close quarter stretch where you got to go to either the front or the tailboard. You got 3 sections of hose that are coming out of the rollers on our trucks. We got cross lays, so you had to know what you were doing. And if you had to do that Charlie side stretch going through a gated house with the cars and the boats and everything on the side to go stretch to the abuelas quarters in the back, if you weren't gathering lengths on your forearm, all right, and snaking that hose around you, you would basically have to have somebody at every turn or drop point and humping dry hose before you even got back there.
Chris, would you, God bless you, man. Would you explain to everybody outside of Miami what the abuelas quarters are? Because it is so, and by the way, it's coming to a town near you.
I know what it is.
You know what it is? It's the mother-in-law quarters.
Yeah, in-law quarters.
And I don't care where you guys are. Where are all these millions of people going to live? They're going to be living right now in Miami-Dade. How many garages are inhabited by at least one family, if not 2? So we're stretching our opportunities to stretch to the front door of a private residence over the course of just in your career, Chris, as reduced drastically.
Correct.
So whatever you want to show this, and I think I'm going to brag on you because I'm proud of you like a son, that these 2 firefighters had never deployed this load. Keep that in mind. It's impressive in of itself, but just keep in mind that they had never deployed this hose load. Now, you want to go ahead and take it from there, Chris?
Yeah. So when we started running this modified flat load on our rig, it's just a flat load. Basically, our lead length is bundled together. And for the sake of uniformity and just ease, it's got 2 pull loops on it. The first pull loop representing the actual first 50-foot working length. And it's strapped together so that way you could be hands-free. If you got to do a shoulder load deployment, there's a couple ways to deploy it. And the next pull loop is basically for ease of explanation about the midpoint of the rest of the load. It's really at the next coupling mark. But this load was awesome for us because I don't know about anybody else. Our rigs are getting higher. Our trucks, hose bed length's been getting higher. So, and we've been hiring shorter people. So my truck is an E1 urban interface. So it's basically an E1 with a 6-inch lift on it. And I measured in an S-load configuration from the ground floor to the actual nozzle section on an S-load. It was 9 feet on our 200-foot cross lay. So even guys that were 6'4" would still have to be on their tippy toes just to grab that nozzle or the horseshoe on the opposite side on the S-load. So I said, you know what? Let's start running this. Let's start giving it a try. We started giving it a try and instantly sold. The point that you can stretch this from the ground floor in full gear without having to scale the side of the rig is great. You don't have to. You're not worried about blowing out a knee or anything like that, and it's easy. The stretches. The basic pull is what we called it, where you just put a bunt. You either put the first pull loop, put it on your shoulder, turn around and grab the second pull loop, and you just go. It's a flat load. You know, the simplicity in fixing problems with it, if something should come up, is night and day difference from the S load. Like I said, with the S load, you know, you grab the wrong couplings and you're going to be in for a doozy, especially on a 200-foot cross lay or anything longer than that. So when we finally got to the point where we brought this to the training division to see if we can, and in collaboration with the guys from Station 2, that were, you know, all of us had a portion of this whole committee and this research and development stuff. When we started running it, training division, Captain Juan Miguel said, "Hey, try to get me some videos of you guys stretching." Okay, cool. What kind of stretches do you want? See if you can get some stretches on apartments and stuff like that. I said, perfect. Well, what better way to show the versatility of that load than to doing a well stretch to a third floor, extending a jump line. One of the days that we started doing this was I had 2 firefighters, both on overtime, that had never seen it. Showed it to them in the morning, you know, during the morning checkout before we went out to start drilling. And start running, you know, trying to get some decent video footage. And after maybe 2 stretches on that building, which is a 6-story, semi-enclosed hallway, multifamily, with beautiful wells in the stairwells. We did a well stretch, lined up the cross lays with the stairwell opening. Well stretch, single firefighter deployment, left-hand return on the stairs to the third floor, and we got a 350-foot cross lay to the third floor in about 3.5 minutes, just walking.
Now, Eric was mentioning the Minuteman, but actually, Chris, when you have a way of configuring the bulk of that load to be a Minuteman.
Correct. It's basically just inverting the load after you put the pre-connected bundle on your shoulder. It's just inverting the rest of it. Takes a little coordination, just, you know, or some practice, basically pulling down the rest of the load out. And as you step out, you turn and you twist, and now you have your modified Minuteman, so to speak. If that's for single firefighter deployment.
Okay, so we're going to take. We got a stretch here. You've got 2 pre-connects, cross lays. One's 150 feet. The other is 200 feet. And they are connected to the kickstand swivel with about a 10-foot pigtail. So if you want to show the video, I think it would be, I think people will understand and get an appreciation for what we're doing here.
All right, 200 to third floor with a jump line extension.
Yeah, it's that's Pew, firefighter Pew. Her mother was an incredible athlete, and so I can't remember what her first name is. But she's just a natural born athlete, and I'm not surprised that she performed as well as she did. Uh, and you can't outrun her, Chris.
No, no, oh no,
No, she runs like a gazelle. Her mom used to run for Northwest High School, but now none of us are advocating that you adopt that hose load. I think we're all, if I can speak for everybody here, figure out what works for you, man. Figure out look at Eric's already done that. Eric has already done that. Okay. We've done that, Chris. What works for me? God knows. And Mike, you are a tried and true hardcore truck guy. But you have always had and made it clear to your people that what your primary job is in terms of supporting engine companies. You want to give us a little bit of your philosophy on that, Mike? You're muted, Mike.
Sorry about that. Yes, if you're a truckie and you walk by a snagged hose line, a kink in a hose line, and you don't bend over to fix it or help it or get that line in place, you are useless. Okay. It is a team effort. And the truck doesn't put the fire out. I know that. Okay. So we have to have water. And if we don't get the water, if you're not helping them get that water, you're not doing the public. You're not doing your job. Okay. Don't walk past the kink. Don't walk past a pinch point. If there's hose jammed up, if they're having a tough time, if you hear the nozzle man's lament, more line, get the line, go back and get some, help them, because we are part of a team.
Yes, and we use our and I'll bounce this off of Eric as well. We operate similarly that our medic rescues are staffed with a firefighter, 2 firefighters, and an officer. And I think in our phone conversations, you team them up with an engine company, so you basically have 6 people.
For us, with our with getting these rescues, we'll have 2 on those. That's only at a couple stations, but we really have to almost practice like we play and assume you have 3 people on one Type 1 engine as you're approaching the scene, and then hope that you got 4. But that's again, that comes with the reps and training and having everybody consistently training on the same thing, because we may get muck crews all the time, and it doesn't matter whose name is on the back of that coat. Everybody's got to operate to the same efficiency.
And very honestly, I think that's great, Eric, that you always set it up for the lowest. Because if that rescue crew is out on a run or whatever else, and you don't have them coming, you got to be able to do it. Now, if you get an extra guy, it's just going to make it easier. But you always got to set, whoever is listening, if whatever your minimum staffing is, your crew, if it's 2 people, if it's 3 people, if it's 4 people, that's your minimum. You have to set it to the minimum you can respond with, and then build up from there.
To your point, Mike, Captain Mike, one of the worst mistakes a fire officer can make is attempting an evolution, whatever kind, with insufficient personnel. You will not only fail, you'll beat up your people, and you may very well make conditions worse when you open doors, chock doors, make openings, or have to leave a fire burning because you ran out of air and you have no one to relieve you. So here we are in agreement. You're in the biggest fire department in the United States and almost the world, Mike. We've got Eric from a growing department. Chris, in a growing area of a large metropolitan fire department. We all see eye to eye on this, that whatever we're going to do, and this is why, Captain Mike, we've learned a lot from FDNY, but you have to have the wisdom and maturity. And I've made that mistake when I worked in the suburbs of Chicago, Captain Mike. We tried to pattern ourselves after, I was on a suburban department, pattern ourselves after a little Chicago fire department, and we failed miserably. So, no, I think it brought out the limitations, the capabilities and the limitations.
Yep.
We're just about out of time. And I have to tell you, I never get tired of talking about this. And some of our best conversations are when we are at the most basic functions that we do, because everybody can relate to this. Everybody can relate. Chris, you know how proud I am of you. And I really thank you. And you know, your dad and my dad, they're both up in heaven in the cheering section right now. Eric, we're going to have you back, brother. We're going to have you back. We've just scratched. And Mike?
I just want to say one thing.
Go ahead, brother.
Hose stretches are the basics. And if you're not good at doing the basics, you're not going to be good at doing anything.
Correct.
Okay? Do the basics, whatever it is. Be good at stretching in what you respond to 90% of the time in your district. I know there are outliers in everyone's district. There are different things and everything else. But if you are going to 2-story private dwellings, okay, go be good at doing them. Be good at doing what you are supposed to do, okay? Because if you're not, there's something wrong there, okay? Be good at your job. And if you are not comfortable with your men and women on your department going to your house to get your wife, your kids, your dogs, your cats, whatever it is, out, then it's time to get back to the basics.
With that being said, Mike, we're going to wrap it up. And that's pertains to any department. Here you are in the biggest fire department in the country, but that applies to the smallest fire department in the country. So again, a shout out to our friends at Key. That's keyhose.com. By the way, that was what you were deploying there, Chris. And by the way, did you charge it?
What's that?
Did you end up charging that line?
Not that day on those evolutions, because we were just trying to get a bunch of
Right. Yeah,
but it charges beautifully.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to kink key hose. Yeah. And at the end there, I'm not a big Cleveland load guy, but young Miss Pugh fashioned that. She improvised a coil.
And that was and that was partly in fact that she wanted us to practice it, because she really had.
God bless her. God bless.
But she did it.
Hey, you guys that defected on me today, mutinied. I hope you're having a good time in Michigan. And wow, what a great conversation. Eric, we'll have you back.
Thank you. I'd be glad to come back.
Oh, we'd love to have you back.
I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Eric. God bless you. God bless everybody. May God keep you safe in our most noble of professions. Till next month.
Thank you, gents. Have a good one.